I think of all the things that I've learned over the course of classics, the one that's kind of stuck with me the most in the most areas of my life is just this idea that no one's going to ever experience something the same way. Like, almost never. There are a few, generalizations, but nothing is really universal. And that's kind of the thing that has given me the most pause when I've been heavily contemplating what course to set for the club this year. Obviously, we've been through a lot, and there's a lot of different ideas out there. But it really gives me this impression that it's a lot bigger than just myself. So I kind of feel like I have to treat it that way. So hopefully over the course of however long this is going to take, I'd like to take this opportunity to just kind of lay things out a bit about where I'm coming from and where I'm going. So hi, I'm Sam Boudreau. This is a stroll through the forum, and we're gonna do something great. So the first thing I want to talk about, I guess, a bit is, my history with classics and what the experience has been like for me. As I said earlier, it's one of many that's possible for a person to have, but it'll kind of give an impression of where I'm coming from with a lot of the things that I say. The way that I describe getting into classics to start with was it snuck up on me when I most expected it. I mean, I don't really know what I was thinking going into grade 9. To be honest, it was kind of aimless. I think now that now that I'm a senior, the direction I'm going is a lot more obvious than it was like even a year ago, let alone 3. So I kind of fell into like the very expected trap of just kind of getting roped in. I think I literally took the course on more or less a whim because I needed that elective. I didn't really have a lot of friends to consult with. A lot of us did end up taking it, and to be fair, most of the friends I have now I met through classics, so it's a bit hard for me to say, thinking about it now. But I was definitely siphoned in with the event trap, You go to the movie night for the free food, they say, hey, sign up for junior trivia, and you say, sure. And you sign up for that, and then you win it because you're awesome. And sort of more or less, it kind of just feels like the thing to do. When I think about it, I think it's kind of funny the way it all happened. Some of my close friends will know this, and everyone else will be very concerned to hear it, but I have an interesting fascination with anything vaguely resembling a cult. Not like in terms of like what they actually like and worship or whatnot. It doesn't even have to be like a religious kind of cult. It can be like political factionings, any kind of really tight group, because they all have different strategies of getting people in. Whether or not you want to call that recruitment, indoctrination, there's some strong words you could use. But in my case, it's actually quite similar to the way that a lot of cults might go around getting new people. It starts something small, like you go take a survey about your personality, or you go like to a single seminar and they give you a little tiny information guide, maybe a phone number you can call. Like, it's really, really tiny, but just over time, as you go to more and more things, you're putting in this bigger and bigger commitment, and there's kind of this expectation at the end that you're going to get something out of it. Now, in the case of cults, there could be something, but usually it's very nebulous, and it's just, you'll reach, a true peace, you'll be the most woke possible. It's sort of that vague stuff to kind of just keep you in. But for classics, I actually think there is something that you can get out of it, but it also kind of exists in that only you can really give it to yourself sense. I'll probably get into that a bit later in my whole what is classic spiel, which will be quite important, I'm sure. But that hopefully kind of gives an idea of why it was really, really tough for me to get put in a position like this. For a long time, it just sort of just felt like the thing to do, and I don't want to say I didn't have a lot of agency, but it certainly felt like I was not the most impassioned person, you might say. I still enjoyed it, and I still had fun with it, but it always just kind of felt like the thing to do. There was never really much of a choice. There's not much consideration to be had. it kind of paints a sad picture of my life, but yeah, that's how it is sometimes. Even my appointment as president, I would say, was probably not surprising, but not something I don't think I was ready to accept. I mean, no offense to my grade and all, but things have been kind of unfortunate, given the total engagement and involvement, even from like one of the highest grades of the club right now. Like, we are the seniors, and our representation has been less than great over the years. Even it started off pretty strong, but you know how these things go. But that kind of left in a weird situation. Like, I really don't know. Even the club was kind of stuck with me as well, in the same way I kind of got stuck with the club. What else was there? What other options? Okay, I feel like this has taken on a bit of a negative tone, but I do have some positives I want to talk about. I've sort of talked about how the situation was kind of stuck, sort of an accident, but I would say it's been the happiest accident of my life, I want to say. I found this great group of people, and I'm someone who struggles a lot with sort of the friendships thing and putting myself out there, and the sense of community you get out of classics is really, really empowering and really, really special. It gives you this reason you can just hang out and be yourself and talk with a lot of people about funny stuff, literally whatever you want. But at the same time, as fun as it was, it never made me stop to think about why I stayed in classics. To be honest, I like I said, I kind of just went with it, and leaving never really crossed my mind. Like, it was never an active burden. So why would I bother to do that? And as I mentioned, since I kind of got pulled in, I never thought in the first place, why would you join classics? Which would be like the obvious first question. And then you would ask why you stayed. So these are things that I kind of got away without ever thinking about. And that takes me to the present day, when, if you've seen the other Stroll in the Forum episodes, Joaquin has a very interesting fascination with why people would stay in classics. And I don't blame him, to be honest, given how many people have left. Like, there has to be something still in it that keeps people here, keeps people like me here. At a certain point, it would make sense for me to just drop in and leave if I really didn't care. But I think the fact that I'm still here told me that there's something in it that's like worth caring about, and I had never really thought about what it was. The only answer I really had to the question at the time, and I think even still now, is the friendship and the community aspect. Like, there's a lot to classic. There's a lot. There's the movies, there's the competitions, there's conference and all that. Most of that stuff was gone this year. Like, we had like a weird online conference thing in my grade 10 year that was alright. It was interesting. We had some versions of some of the events. This year, though, there was like basically nothing in like the entire latter half. And coincidentally, that's also when there was a big drop-off. But if you ask me if I thought it was because there was just no events, I honestly can't bring myself to believe that. Like, obviously the events exist, but I think the events were sort of the means by which people got to know each other, that they actually bonded. It's like, tying back to the whole community thing, I think that's the reason people got into it. The events were sort of like a vehicle for bringing people closer together, and since there was no events, and really there wasn't a whole lot of community stuff going on, except for like the 3 a.m. Discord gang, hashtag never forget. Other than that, there was people were basically left out to dry, and that then it makes perfect sense why they would leave. Like, there's nothing there for them, regardless of what their actual preference of classics is. So, building off of that kind of led me to the conclusion that in setting the course this year, friends are going to be what's going to keep us together. Already, there's a bit of, disagreements and differing visions, and there's probably going to be arguments. And while that is concerning, that's kind of what I have to do as a president. That's what you put up with. You're going to have to make those judgment calls and work in the interest of the whole group. So I think if we're functioning as a unit, like, that's the first building block, and it's the main benefit to classics. Like, what are people that are joining for the first time going to take away if we can't even get along with each other? I guess that seems like a decent segue into my what is classics right now spiel. So it's we're a bit disagreeable right now, but I don't think that changes what I think of the Classics Club itself. It used to be a lot of things, and now it's almost nothing. There are 10 of us on exec compared to I think the 25 last year, and our base of people in the Latin course itself is pretty slim as well. Like, they've merged the year 2s and 3s. It's really hard to reach out to the new 9s and all that. Hopefully, now that things are, reopening and whatnot, it's going to be a little bit easier, but our recruitment, or whatever you want to call it, from the year before has been, I don't think anybody would say they're proud of it. But that's sort of part of the conclusion that I've drawn, which is the community sense and the passion is like the core of Classics. That's the one thing we still sort of have, and I think it's the one thing we'll have to lean on the most if we want something solid and tangible as a foundation this year. I think it's the lack of the community that made so many people leave. I'll be honest, I never really thought about what things to prioritize last year, and that's kind of why we leaned into the event so much. We really wanted to have that junior trivia happen. We tried to run as many events over the course of weeks as possible. And some of them did work to benefit the community, but a lot of it was still sort of akin to the hyper-competitive mindset or whatever that you might expect from conference, like really late in the year Classics. Like, that's not the kind of thing you'd bring out at junior trivia. Junior trivia is like this, it's this really harmless little, let's get the 9s together and answer some funny questions. And we tried to do that, but there was always that air of like competition and, ruthless, cutthroat, blood sport, whatever. Not a lot, but definitely a little bit, and it definitely comes on strong at a time like this when really what do we have to show for it? Basically, Junior Trivia was our biggest event of the year. Maybe that's why we leaned into it so much, but I think the impression that it left was probably not the one you'd expect from a club like this, which prides itself so much on the community aspect. Like, in terms of the impression that I think a lot of the 9s got, you probably wouldn't see so much of that. So that's kind of my first priority, I think. If we're drafting up our official president mission statement, make the club feel like it's a group of happy friends. Obviously, there still has to be the official aspects to it. The club has to run the events and have the exec hierarchy and stuff. But the way we want it to feel and the environment we want to kind of foster is one where a bunch of people can just come and hang out. I think that's kind of what we want, especially when, our front on the big events like conferences is so weak. We can't really draw people in for that anymore. I remember how many times we felt embarrassed for talking about conference in front of the 9s, and they're just like, bro, we weren't there, we didn't see that. So that's kind of part of the big concern I have, which is how do you make new 9s feel like a part of this group? How do you create that environment of friendship when our experiences are so different? Just to remind people, I was basically pulled into the club on a chain. I mean, that's a little bit of a morbid way of putting it, but really, I never really had to think about how do you get someone to join a club. I just kind of did, and didn't ever think about it even for myself. So now I got to think about it for other people, and it's a whole other ballpark again. So that brings us to what things we can do as a club this year. And like I said before, the fun, exciting things. I've had a talk with some people in exec, and the amount of exciting things I see are really inspiring, to be honest. There's talk of the R&R Bovity, which I know Joaquin was really looking forward to, so I hope that happens. There was talk of the dating sim, which I think is hilarious, and something I'm very intrigued by, and I hope to be involved in as president. And even Book of Aurelius stuff, which I think everyone really wants to happen at this point. I've kind of been beating around the bush a bit, but I gotta put my foot down and commit to it, I think. Because it's fun, it's exciting, and it really gets people to think about classics in a way that I really never did in my first couple years. To me, the fun, exciting, the crazy, the passionate stuff, that is what I would like to call like the club's heart. That is like the heart, the soul kind of thing. And then you have, the return of the events that we're hopefully going to have this year, the Curtom and the Junior Trivia. I guess you'd call that like the club's skeleton, I guess. Like that's like the structure, the bones. But that's kind of a means for holding up the heart. Like, it's sort of like mind-body kind of thing. You can't really have one without the other. For me, the events were the way to get me into the friendship. For someone else, it could be the other way around. You know, their friends are joining, so they'll also join for that. But they find out that they really like the events and whooping UTS or whatever it is that draws them in. People are going to find their own things to prefer, but Classics really has both and always kind of has had both. I think the way we want to approach it this year is to probably start with the heart, since that's far simpler, and the emotional appeal of Classics is really going to foster a lot more dedicated people. And then taking that excitement and that passion and bringing it to the events is probably going to give us a way better edge than doing it the other way around, like starting with the events and then trying to pull in friends from that. Like, it just doesn't work that way. So that's kind of where I'm coming from when I think about what things we want to do as a club this year. Like, that's our starting point. Eventually we'll have it all, but you have to pick your first step. And I think that makes the most sense to me. Luckily, my exec is already very opinionated, and everyone's got all these crazy ideas already, so it won't be too hard for that to actually happen. But that does bring me to, what do I do as a president? Like, how do I facilitate this? I do have some responsibilities of management, but, you know, I can't do everything. To be honest, I have no idea even how much say I should have. Like, obviously, you know, when you're the president, it really sounds like you're in charge of every single decision, but not only do I not think that's how it works in real life, I don't think that's how it should work. I mean, one thing that always comes up with the leaving exec is just who has to live with the consequences of whatever actions we decide to pull. Like, basically, like last year's exec, I mean, we could talk about the choices they made in picking this year's exec, whatever. Put it in the past, water under the bridge. I'm not talking about that right now. But as a senior, what does it matter to me what decisions I make for Classics? Obviously, I want the best interest for Classics, but in terms of the actual policies or whatever that get introduced, how much is that going to concern me once I've left? Obviously, I would really hope that I'd stay in touch with the Classics people for years after, but ultimately, I'll just kind of be an outside observer after that. But the rest of exec, like I mentioned, we're really low on seniors this year. The rest of exec has to live with it for at least another year. And the nines are going to have to live with it for like 4 years or so. Like, that's a much longer time. So when I look at the things that I'm thinking of doing, is that really going to serve to benefit them, or is it just me? I think a lot of us can fall into this trap of making all the choices for our own personal benefit. As a club president that's going to be gone in a year, I don't think I can do that. Like, that's just doesn't seem the way to do it. And to be honest, like, I've done some talking around with the people that I've got, and a lot of them have some really strong visions and ideas and stuff. Like, that gives me a lot of confidence that I can put that trust in them. Like I said, like, I can do the long-term planning stuff. I can think years ahead, but I'm not going to be here years from now. That's just the facts. So I figured, why not have like some faith in the people that actually have to deal with what I do? Obviously, like, I'll use some common sense to make some sensible decisions, but ultimately, it's not going to be my club anymore. Like, that's the time will go, and what I do or what we do here, that is going to be the part that people remember about this year of Classics. They're not going to remember they might remember the people. I don't know. Maybe I'll make a strong impression, but it's really going to be about what the club becomes by the end of this year, and that's something I would feel very confident in leaving up to the people that are actually going to be part of the future club. So I don't really know how to phrase it other than saying one of my big guiding principles is to be a leader to exec rather than just a leader to the nines. Like, I've kind of established that I trust what the rest of exec is going to do with the nines and whatnot. Like, I talked to them about events, talked to them about the passion, talked about how we're going to deal with that. Honestly, it's pretty solid stuff. I don't think I could really critique it or ask for better. But then the question becomes, do I trust exec with itself? Like, there's going to be conflicts of interest. Someone's going to have to make the final call. And also, keeping exec happy is like honestly probably going to be way more demanding of the club president's attention than anything else. Like I feel like as a president, that's really part of my responsibility. So I think that is where I want to direct a lot of focus of. Like the part 2 of the mission statement is stop exec from eating itself alive, I guess. It's kind of going to function like a two-way honor system. Like if I can trust exec to basically train the entire future generation of classics, then I will promise them to do everything in my power, like to stop the club from collapsing in on itself. I figure I'll be very involved in that type of management, really managing exec. I think in a different call I referred to it as organizing the organizers. I'll definitely be delegating a lot of responsibility for the management of a lot of individual events to the rest of exec. Like as a president, that's what you do. But then what will then become the president's responsibility is making sure that actually gets done, watching people organizing it, make sure that they are in a good spot to do it. And they have to trust me to do that. Like I'm going to trust them to run the events, and they have to trust me that I'm going to be watching and checking in and making sure that exec is treating itself as well as it will treat the nines this year. I guess the only problem with that whole idea is I can't just pretend the nines aren't there. Like I can't be all up in the headspace of exec and president and all that stuff. Granted, at this point, since the next school year hasn't started yet, that's all there really is in classics right now. But I still am very much the figurehead, I guess, of classics. That's really what the prez is. It's like the face of classics. It's a phenomenon, I guess. I've coined it as presence, which is short for pres essence. Oh, that's so bad. That's awful. Anyway, what that basically boils down to is being kind of open, being approachable for the whole club. Like you really got to be out there. If the club doesn't know who the president is, then it really makes it kind of awkward. I think it kind of contributes to the aesthetic of the tight-knit group that we're trying to go for. Like, they have to know people in the club. They have to know stuff about them. It has to be someone that you can go to, someone that you can trust. So, like, because of that, like, there's going to be a big focus on the enthusiasm and the engagement of the events. It's sort of like a monkey see kind of situation where if I'm putting that in to the events, my expectation is just that others can see that and do the same. That is what we want, I think. Like, nothing against big competitions like conference, but those feel very individualized. You kind of go on your own personal journey, you hang out with your friends a little bit, but when you're actually writing those, like the Scantron tests, the cursus, that is very much your own business. It doesn't really contribute that much to the community aspect of classics, which is fine. Like I said, classics is a lot of things, but in terms of our initial focuses in the year, the vibe I want to be giving off is a person that you could see as a friend. I think that's all you could really want out of a club president. I think what a lot of people want classics to be this year is just a place that people actually want to come. No coercion, no forcing, no scheduling. Well, they're still scheduling, but it's a scheduling that people actually want. The people that people actually want to show up. Like, we want classics to be a place where people go to see their friends, where people want to go to talk about classics that, like, you'd look forward to outside of an exec meeting, so that you want to pursue as a passion, like, in your own time. And the way we're going to do that this year is by showing people how to do it. Like, I consider classics a place to go to see my friends, to talk about classics and stuff. It's something that I look forward to doing. And the way that you can show other people that's even possible, that's a way to enjoy classics, is by doing it, by showing up for the events and talking about it. So, like, I don't know how to put it in any other way than just being engaged at all times and making sure people can see that. Like, that ties into ideas of being very transparent as a leader, obviously still being capable, but having all of that in front of people's eyes for them to see, and them being able to take in that passion and that interest. And that creates passion and interest in them in turn, which is what we want, I think, with a club this small. The people you have in the middle have to be dedicated. And the way you foster that sense is by showing them this is what the club's about, and doing exactly that, leading by example. So that's sort of my platform, my mission statement as Prez. I know it's a little late. I didn't actually have to campaign for president, so I didn't have to write a platform. But I guess if I did, it would be stop exec from committing the classical sins of hubris and probably also wrath. Showing the people in the club and out that classics can be fun. And doing that by treating it like it's fun. If I treat the club like it's a group of friends and we're doing things to have fun and we're doing things to show how fun it can be, that's the message people take away. They'll say, hey, classics is a fun place, which I think is what I already believe in, but you gotta get everyone else to buy it too. If I'm being honest, it'll be tough because I really do dread certain parts of this year. It's not going to be easy, but I expect to have a lot of fun with it. I mean, maybe in treating the club like it's a fun place, maybe I'll start to believe it myself. Not that I don't already, but I really have to buy it. And I think everyone else kind of does too. I guess it does relieve me a little bit that I have some semblance of a solid platform at this point. Glad we got that out of the way. Alright, I guess that's about it. This was a mess. But I hope it kind of gives a better perspective to anyone listening about the hopeful direction that we want to take this year. I don't want to sound, cautiously optimistic or anything like that. I do want people to really believe in the dream of making classics a really successful place, but there are certain steps that we have to take. I'm sure in the next couple of months it'll just be a lot of housekeeping. We've got to get things set up. But I don't know. I'll see what people think. This has been a Stroll on the Forum. I have been Sam. And see ya.